Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. All right, well, welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and today we are embarking on a deeply personal but inspiring story. And this month, our focus is on Healing Beyond Betrayal as our series, and exploring the profound paths of resilience and recovery after experiencing deep personal loss. Well, joining me today is Susan Snow. She's a remarkable individual whose life was drastically changed when she lost her father, a LAPD detective, Thomas C. Williams, in 1985. Susan is not only an author and public speaker, but she's also a coach and a realtor who has turned her profound grief into a source of empowerment for others. So before we bring Susan to the stage, let's take a quick break, all right? It's your girl, the goddess, Nyomi Banks, here on the Season of Self-Love podcast. We'll be right back.
Washington Wellness Institute focuses on healing always. For me, if I look good, then I feel good. If I feel good, then I share the good. If I share the good, then I celebrate the good. If I celebrate the good, then I live the good. So I can be paid to be my greatest. But I have to learn the good to be the good.
So, what does it take to be the greatest? It's as simple as a free 15-minute consultation. Be kind to yourself and heal always.
Are you ready to transform your pain into power? Join us this September for the 30-day Healing Beyond Betrayal Challenge, From Hurt to Hope. Starting September 1st, embark on a journey of healing and self-discovery. Each day, you'll receive empowering lessons, practical exercises, and supportive community connections, designed to help you overcome the hurt of betrayal and reclaim your joy. Don't let betrayal define your story. It's time to rise, heal, and rebuild a brighter future. Sign up today at theseasonofselflovepodcast.com.
What are some common barriers that prevent people from expressing? Hey, it's your girl, the goddess, Nyomi Banks, here from the Season of Self-Love podcast.
Yeah, I would say remorse. So shame and guilt is a very dividing emotional.
And these are one of the many amazing conversations that we have every day, Monday through Friday, right here on the Season of Self-Love podcast with myself, Nyomi Banks, as well as our resident therapist, Dr. Will Washington of Washington Wellness Institute. Come by.
The reality of our relationships with people.
Come by.
And a lot of times we're afraid of how people will look at us. And so that compassion can't enter.
You can hit us on the
So that's a
website,
really
the
big
Season of Self-Love podcast.com.
Let me ask you this, with the truth, is it...
All right, well, welcome back to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I'm your host, Nyomi Banks, and today we're discussing Healing Beyond Betrayal, a journey of loss and resilience, with our guest author, public speaker, coach, and realtor, Susan Snow. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. I know this... I can't wait to get into this topic because I've never truly really spoke to someone that had this depth of, and I don't want to say betrayal as well, but just this travesty in their life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? And
Yeah.
The thing is, we're going to talk about it later on in this show to where even how society is right now. And so I really want to, I think this conversation along would show the depth of your humanity, your forgiveness,
just your healing and your story at all. And so I'm excited for this. I truly am, and I want to. I want us to do a meditation first before we get into it, because I'm feeling chills right now. Chills, just little chills right now. All right, my listeners. So before we dive into this discussion, we're going to start a moment just to center ourselves with a short guided meditation. So wherever you at, I invite you just to get in a comfortable position and close your eyes. Let's start by taking a deep breath in and hold it for a moment. Now exhale slowly. Now I want you to imagine a gentle wave washing over you, carrying away your pain and bringing in peace. Now as you continue to breathe deeply, I want you to allow each breath to bring you more into this moment, filling you with calm and comfort. I want you to picture a path ahead. I want you to bathe in the warm and soothing light of a path of healing and acceptance. I want you to hold on to the serene image as you slowly open your eyes and you are ready to engage with our story today. All right, well, thank you for joining us in this moment, Susan, as well as you, my listeners. If you're new here to the Season of Self-Love podcast, it's something that we do every day, Monday through Friday, is we just take a nice little quick center guided message just to center us before we get into the topic at hand. All right, Susan, so let's start at the beginning. Can you share what happened the night that your father was tragically taken from you?
Sure. So it was actually Halloween night. And the plan that day, being 17, I was going to go to a Halloween party. I thought I was going to a Halloween party. My dad and I had a discussion that morning that didn't end with me going to that party because it was on a weeknight. And I, in having that discussion, of course I was frustrated and stuff. And we left each other that morning frustrated. But throughout the day, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do everything in my power to manipulate my parents to let me go to that party. So I went home. The plan was my mom would get home first and my dad would go and pick my 6-year-old brother up from school. And then he would be home. So I cleaned the house, top to bottom. And my mom came home first and she was off getting her costume off. And I was putting mine on and the phone rang. And being the teenager, I thought it was just for me. Like who's going to call my parents, right? So I ran and I grabbed the phone and it was not for me. It was a lady from my brother's school. And all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. At that point, I just, I didn't know what to think. And my mom had rounded the corner. I just handed her the phone. I watched my mom talk to this woman on the other line and I watched her posture change. And in looking at her slumping forward, I realized it was not good. It was bad. She got off the phone and turned to me and said, "We're going to the school." So we got in the car. Neither one of us spoke a word to each other. And we drove to the school. Faith Baptist School in Canoga Park is, it's got like a parking lot in the middle of the school. And so that's where we parked. The kids were let out on the back side of the school. And this was after school. So that's where everybody was let out. When we got there and we were walking towards the back of the school, that's when we saw the night sky was lit up by all the police cars. There was an ambulance that was sitting still in the street. And 2 officers were walking towards us, and they had tears in their eyes. And we just kept going past them. Both my mom and I caught from our peripheral vision, we saw my dad's truck. So we started running towards there. And as we rounded the corner, we saw glass on the ground and got around the truck and saw my dad's body. And it was covered up, but it was there. And I watched my mom collapse. And I stood there in complete shock. My young brain could not process what I was seeing. And all I focused on was that ambulance and wondering why they weren't helping him. So soon enough, like some officers came, grabbed our arms and escorted us into the school and put us in an office. I sat down in a chair and my mom got kind of pulled to the side by, I believe, some detectives. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had no idea where my brother was. I didn't know if he was hurt or what he saw or anything. And I was still trying to process what I just saw myself. I just couldn't comprehend it. And I heard 2 women talking in the office, and they said that my dad was deceased. And that's when my world cracked. And I wanted to run out of that office as fast as I could. But everything in my body felt like cement. I couldn't move. And my mom came back and she looked at me and said, "I'm sending you with a neighbor." Now I understand, and I talk about this a lot. There was a lot of chaos that night. There was a lot going on, and I get it. But as a kid myself, being 17, even though I wanted to leave, I wanted to run, there was a part of me that wanted to stay with my family, wanted to be with my family unit. And I wasn't getting that chance.
Yeah.
So the rest of the night, I did go to the neighbor's house. My poor neighbor had known my parents for years, and she was trying to wrap her head around what happened. At the time, I was dating a boy who was 19 at the time, and we had only been dating 3 months. But he was the only thing that I wanted at that point.
Yeah.
I needed support.
Yeah.
So she called him at work, and he came to the house immediately, but she didn't give him any information. So when he arrived, he came to the porch, and I went to the porch, and he said, get your stuff. Let's go. What hospital is he in? Where's your mom? Where's your brother? That kind of thing. And the words could not spit out of my mouth. Like, I couldn't say the words, because if I did, they were real. And after a little bit of prodding from him, I finally just blurted it out. He's gone. And my boyfriend said, "What do you mean he's gone?" And I said, "He's gone. He's not at a hospital. He's gone." And I watched this 19-year-old boy drop to his knees. So the both of us were really struggling, obviously, because we were young. And we didn't know how to comprehend everything that was going on around us. My neighborhood looked like something I couldn't even describe. I mean, it was police officers everywhere, their helicopters overhead. It was just a scene that I wouldn't wish on anyone. And back then, and I talk about this a lot, back then in the 80s, there was no talk of mental health.
Right.
And there was little known about PTSD. In fact, back then it was called something completely different. It was called shell shock. And so it was attached to people coming back from war. And there definitely weren't any kind of resources for teenagers or kids in traumatic experiences, episodes of this caliber. And so it was just, it was a night that really did change my life. in so many different ways. And like I said, I was a kid and I didn't know, after that, I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know all of the different emotions I was feeling. I didn't know how to verbalize them.
Yeah. I can imagine. I want to do this really fast, Susan. I want to just take a moment. Let's take a break and then we'll come back. Okay.
Sure.
All right. It's your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks here on the Season of Self-Love podcast. And we'll be right back. Hey, my beautiful souls. This is your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks. And I am excited to share something special with you. Introducing my latest ebook workbook, Healing Beyond the Betrayal, a journey of growth, empowerment, and renewal. In these 55 pages, I offer you insight, heartfelt stories, and practical worksheets designed to guide you on your healing journey. So if you experience betrayal or you are seeking personal growth, this resource is made just for you. You see, it's time to reclaim your power and embrace renewal. So you can get your copy by visiting the seasonofselflovepodcast.com. And as a thank you for being part of our community, use the code HEALED09 at checkout to enjoy a 15% discount. So let's embark on this journey together because you deserve to heal, grow, and thrive. All right, Susan, first of all, thank you for sharing that story with me. Even as you were talking and speaking, my eyes were getting very watered. Like I should have grabbed some tissue because I felt almost every emotion that you felt that day. Just not knowing where your father is, seeing the truck, seeing the glass, then not realizing where your brother is. That had to be just earth-shattering for not only you, but as your mother too. As you mentioned, you only being 17 years old. And I just want to jump ahead because before you spoke about you and your father having a little tense conversation beforehand. And so I kind of know what that feeling was. If I just could have said I love him or just, hugged him before that happened, because no one ever knows how that happened. And this is going to go with the betrayal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you get there, when you see that's happening and your mom removes you from the situation, did it take you time? No, there go my first question. Did you see that or in the beginning before your healing as a sense of betrayal for you? Like you weren't able to be in that moment with her and that she removed you from being with your father. Maybe a guilt sense of you, like I needed to be there because of what we had before, or what the argument was earlier today, but I want him to know that I'm still with him right now, that I'm just not leaving him. And I don't want to put things in your head, but this is what I was feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think at that point, the removal for me was frustrating. However, at the time, like I said, it was a very chaotic night. And I just did what my mom told me to do at that point. So it didn't occur to me what that started in my life patterns until later.
Okay.
But at the time, it was frustration. It was, I needed to be with my family unit. I needed to be with my other parent who would tell me, we're together. We're going to get through this. Like I needed that nurturing. I needed that reassurance because my dad was my security blanket. My dad, even though we argued that morning, my dad was a phenomenal human being. He was very present. And I talk about this a lot. He was a very present parent. So he always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. And my mom was not that person. So when that happened, it changed my mindset for myself to feel like I wasn't important in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And this was such a huge story. The media flocked to it immediately. And it took them a couple of days to figure out that I existed. Because all the focus was on my brother. Obviously, my dad saved his life. Okay, so he was not hurt physically, mentally and emotionally, 100%. But physically, he was not. My dad saved his life in his last moments here. And all the focus went on him and my mom. And so be it, right? Like, you know, but it kind of stacked that feeling of not being important.
Mm-hmm.
And
abandonment.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, you know, I was a child too. And I didn't know how to navigate all of these things that were going on with me because mentally, I went into a very deep depression. I had panic attacks. And even though I had literally, they didn't find the men involved for 6 days. So for 6 days, we had police presence. And when I mean police presence, I mean like 20 in the front, 20 in the backyard, and the helicopters. I had bodyguards. Anywhere I had to go, I had to have a bodyguard with me. And it was just a different life. And, you know, between the panic attacks and the depression and, you know, about 3 days in, I had gone from shock to, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be with my dad. My relationship with my mom was strained prior to his death. And when he died, he was kind of our voice of reason, go between. And he was gone. And I didn't even know how to navigate that relationship. And I feel very blessed that my boyfriend, now husband, helped me just by being a support system for me. He stuck around, and most 19-year-old boys would have hightailed it out of there. Yeah. But he stuck it out, and I think he did because he knew my mom would kind of turtle into herself.
Yeah.
And she did. And so for me, you know, my friends and my boyfriend were my support system at the time. But even then, they didn't know what was truly going on with me.
Right.
You know, so it was just a time where I felt like I had no adults supporting me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Go ahead.
So basically, in the very beginning, I just lived in a fog. I wasn't sleeping. And, you know, and if you go through a traumatic experience, this is kind of a normal thing that happens is you don't sleep.
Right.
And sleep deprivation encourages depression. It makes it worse for sure. And so I walked around in a fog for quite a long time. And wherever people like pointed me in that direction is the direction I went.
And how long did you go through that? Like, when was the point that you say, okay, it's now time for me to heal? Or better yet, what was your way to find the healing? What were some of the steps that you took to get to your recovery?
Yeah, well, so I tell this story and, therapists go, what? But about a week, like a week after the funeral, LAPD came to my mom and said, we want to pay for therapy and we want you to go to therapist. And my mom came to me and said, you're going to therapy. And for me, like as a kid, I thought if you go to a therapist, you're crazy.
Right.
So I didn't know what to expect. I had no expectations going into it. I just wanted to feel better. I just wanted someone to support me and guide me out of this horrible place that I was at mentally. And I went and saw this gentleman. And in hindsight, I feel like back then and in looking at it, I just think that he was not trauma competent. He was not educated at that point to the level of trauma that I had gone through. And so I feel like that's why he kept our sessions very shallow. It was always about my relationship with my mom, my boyfriend, school, and my brother. And he never asked me the question. He never asked me, what did that night do to you? Never. And every week I saw this gentleman, every week I would say to myself, oh my gosh, today's the day. Today's the day. Something's going to happen. Right. And he's going to help me. He's going to help me feel better. And every time I got out of that session, I was just like, this did nothing. And I saw him for an entire year. At the year, he looked at me and said, Susan, you're a well-rounded young lady and you're going to be fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore. So I walked out of there with a mindset of, okay, I must be broken. I'm clearly crazy. Like there's just, even a professional can't help me at this point. So I'm going to have to figure this out for myself. What I got really good at was wearing what I call an emotional mask. I got really good at listening to the language that was coming at me from other people saying things like, oh, you're so brave and you're so strong. And so even though I was having all of these mental things going on and I was living in fight or flight, I wore my mask. And I wore it well, I thought. No one saw the extension of the pain. I didn't allow that to happen because in doing that, I felt like that was a weakness and I wasn't going to show my weakness. That was my feeling of being a survivor and not a victim.
And it was protecting you.
And it was protecting me, right? It wasn't healthy.
Right.
But it was a protection for sure. It was my coping skill. My mom went down a different road. And I don't in any way condemn her because everybody goes through trauma and loss differently.
Right.
And some people use coping skills that are not healthy. And so drinking was her thing. That was her coping skill. And my brother went down the addiction road as well. He's doing great now, though. And so I watched all that. And I said that I don't want that for myself.
Right.
I don't want that for myself. But what I'm doing is working. It's fine. Like, I'm great, living in fight or flight. Not great, but all I knew. And I knew that for 14 years of my life. I married that boyfriend. I had 2 kids. We decided we were going to leave Southern California and move to Colorado. And we moved in 97. In 99, April of 99, I was working as a hairdresser at the time. And I had taken a break on April 20th of 1999. And I went out into the back room and turned on the little TV back there. And up popped all of the Columbine shootings coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And I had colleagues in the room with me, and I had a visceral reaction to what I was seeing. And remember, I was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life. So all of I had flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the school. I saw the kids my own age. I saw the ambulances and all the things that I saw that night were staring me in the face. But I still couldn't understand what was happening to me. I was like, I don't get it. I don't have kids that go there. And even my colleagues, I had never told my story. So they didn't know what was going on with me either. And I just couldn't figure it out. I was like, what is happening? But I did what I normally do. And I put that mask right on, that emotional mask. Nothing's going to hurt me. Nothing's going to bother me. Everybody around me was super upset. And because the salon was pretty close to where Littleton is. So people were very upset. And I was like walking around like nothing is touching me. I finished my day. I walked through the doors, and all of the things that I dealt with came flooding in. And I started to spiral. For 2 days. My husband watched me, and he knew it was a slippery slope. And I knew that it was a slippery slope. I knew that even though I wanted all this pain to stop, I didn't want to leave my children.
Right.
So my husband met me at the door one day, and he said, you have 2 choices. You either get help or I'm putting you in a hospital. And so I said, fine, I'll go get help. And I went to a physician, and he put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he said, I want you to see this therapist. And I laughed in his face because I was like, you know what? Tried that, didn't happen, didn't work for me. I'm just nuts. There's no hope for me. And I said, so what do you think it's going to work now? And he said, you have no choice. You need to go see somebody. And this is the person I need you to see. So I went, and it was a female. And within the first 3 minutes, I knew it was different. She specialized in severe trauma. She specialized in PTSD. I talked to her for literally 2 minutes and told her everything I had gone through at 17 and what I was currently dealing with. And she looked me in the face and she said, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal because you have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so confused because I was like, wait, I didn't go in the military. I didn't go to war. What are you talking about? And she said, no. She said, anyone who has gone through anything trauma in their life can experience PTSD. But what you need to know is that PTSD is not something that goes away. It's something you learn to manage.
Yeah.
And I swear, I always say, like, it was like the sky opened up and rainbows shot out. I had hope. I finally realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't broken, that this woman, this adult, is going to be the person that is going to come alongside me and guide me in my healing journey. And I had hope. And, you know, it was truly a life-changing conversation that I had with her. And I felt like I could be 100% vulnerable with her, and she was my safe space. So I was able to start slowly.
Yeah.
She knew she had her hands full with all the different things mentally that were going on with me. She had to like start small and work her way up. And I'm grateful for that, you know, because that's what truly started. First of all, it started my love of writing. Because she started me on something that is so easy for anyone to do. My issue at that point was I was not sleeping again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so sleep deprived. You know, I had so much sleep deprivation and brain fog and all of those things. And I honestly, looking back, don't even know how I could handle what I was doing. Like, you know, just everyday things, being a mom, being a wife, being a business owner. It was just, it was a lot. But she said, I want you to start with journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at her like, are you kidding me? Really? Journaling? And
Yes,
she said, yep. She said, yep, you're going to start baby steps. And she said, journaling, you could do it through writing. You can do it through art. You can do it through music. Whatever calls to your heart, right? And writing called to my heart. So as crazy as it sounded, I was like, all right, I'll try it. You know, we'll see you next week and I'll tell you what happens. And she said, I want you to do it at night. Because I don't know if it's like you, but when I went to go lay down, my brain would kick on and it would go to the darkest places.
Yeah.
Negative, self-talk, negative, like you name it. It was just ick. I call it the ick place. And I started to write all the things that were in my head on this paper. And she gave me a prompt and all that. And the second night in, I was like, I feel sleepy. By the third night, I was sleeping like a baby. And I went and saw her the next week and I was like, all right, you're right. Like, it was just like, it worked. Shocker. You kind of know what you're doing.
All right. So now that you hear, now that you hear that, now it kickstart. This is your healing, and you know, if you're getting exactly what you needed back when you were 17 years old. So here's my question for you: for your mom and your brother, were they going to the same therapist?
No, they were going to separate. Yeah,
everyone was going to a separate. Yeah. Okay. Now, because we just got, I hate to move you a little along.
No, it's fine.
But I want to talk about your advocacy work and your coaching. How did you become to do that? Like, what said, okay, this is something that I need to do, that I need to take my story, or what, I don't want to put any words around, but what prompted you to say, okay, this is what I want to do?
I firmly believe that my experience and everything that I've gone through led me to this place of giving people a safe space to tell their story, and not feel judged and feel, that I genuinely care about them. Coaching has always come up for me, and it comes up authentically. It started in real estate, honestly. Actually, it started in hair, right? Because hairdressers are armchair therapists. And so I started seeing a pattern in doing hair and listening to folks, as they're in their chair and they're telling me their story.
Right.
I got into real estate and I started to coach new agents. And so as I wrote my book, I realized not only could I write the book and help others and give them hope and healing, but I feel like this is my purpose. It's my purpose to help people and guide people who have been in therapy and have had some tools given to them, but they feel stuck in their lives. And they don't know how to use these tools to move themselves forward. They don't, they just feel stuck, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's goals that they set for themselves, starting a business, or just, whatever it is. I'm not a business coach. I'm a resiliency coach. And so it's a life coaching. Yeah. And there's not a lot of us out there, resiliency coaching. And so I think for me, it's really important. I want to see people feel the way I feel about their lives and get to a point where they feel like themselves for the first time in their lives. Right.
Yeah.
And I do this authentically. Like when I'm working with someone, I'm really connecting with them. And whether you're giving me pushback or not, I still stay in that space of letting you know that you are not alone in this journey.
Right.
And as scary as it is, because let's face it, working on yourself is the scariest thing that you'll ever do. And especially when it comes to trauma, because if you have to, you have to have the vulnerability in order to move through the pain of that trauma, which means you have to relive it, refill it, be in your feels, be in your state, right? But also working with a professional, you have the tools to pull yourself out of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance to my message, is that you have to do the work.
Yeah.
If you want to find the resiliency. It's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. You have to do the work.
Exactly.
And it sucks. I don't candy coat it at all. It's the hardest thing I ever did was, one, go to therapy, find this therapist, and do all the different modalities that helped me. But also writing this book was terrifying to me because I, for the first time, was telling my story, and I was telling it authentically. And I'm very, very vulnerable in my book, very vulnerable. And I knew, putting myself out there, I had some fears around this. I had fear around, what is this going to do to the remainder of the relationship with my mother? Because in telling my story, I have to tell hers.
Tell your story, yes.
Safety.
Yeah.
Some of the men that were involved were still in prison, but putting myself out there, that was scary too. And even my relationship with my husband, right? because we have been together for 39 years, it's our journey. This is not just my journey, it's his journey too. And we've gone through a lot as a couple, and still continue. We're still in our healing. We're still continuing to move forward. So, you know, I talk a lot about bulldozing your fear, because when I wrote the book, every time that fear came up, I had to think of the purpose behind writing it. And behind writing it was seeing those people out there, those people that needed to hear my message, that were out there feeling alone, that needed some hope.
Yeah.
You know, I lived in fight or flight for 14 years. I would never want that for anyone else.
Yeah.
So that's my message of hope for people, to say, hey, you can go through something as traumatic as this and you can find resiliency on the other side, but you got to do the work in order to do it.
Right. Beautiful. So let's go to this, because you did go through such a traumatic situation, a trauma incident. And now let's talk about the community response to the violence. In light of your father's murder, how did you perceive the response? Because I did a little research. I looked up the case. You know, I saw all the things, and there are 3 particular men. And in the newspaper, it said that actually your father was a detective on a case of theirs that he was to be, you know, taking them down. Yeah. Yep. And they were Black men. Am I correct? Yep. They were Black men. Yep. So how do you, and this is going back to coming back from the healing beyond the betrayal. I guess my question is for you is, how did you perceive the response first from the Black community? And have you felt supported or betrayed by them for these years?
Oh my gosh, it is the total opposite. So here's the thing. When that happened, of course, the race card was played, right? Yes. Even back then, my dad, even being a police officer, my dad saw us or taught us to respect everyone. It didn't matter the color of their skin, right? He struggled with some of that internal stuff going on within the force. And we talked about it back then. And so I don't care what color they were. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
These are individual people that made the decision to take my dad's life. Okay. Yeah. So I don't care what color they were, right? The issue was, and I have a chapter in my book about this, is that people in my community, their story for me was that I should hate all Black men. And I didn't feel like that at all. Like, people didn't know who I was. Right. And it was very frustrating. I will give you a total example of this situation. I worked at a tile company when I was 18 years old, 19 years old during the trial. Okay. At the time, it was all over the news all the time. And there were days where I was just done. And my mom would call me, and my mom has no filter. So she would just hammer in all of the information. And as a young lady, I was just like, I just want to turn on my radio and listen to music as I'm driving to work. And one day I turned on the radio, and sure enough, there was a breaking news thing, and it was all about our trial. And I lost it. I was angry. I just was like, I am so over this, because we had 2 trials. Because there were so many men involved in the beginning. I got to work, and I'm friends with all the guys in the warehouse and whatever. And one of my friends, as I was walking through the warehouse, thought it was funny, and he chucked a box at me. And it almost hit me, and I turned around and I called him an explicative, like, the A word. And, and I kept walking to my office. I was just so frustrated.
Right.
I went to the office and I put my stuff down, and all of a sudden my manager walked around the corner and he said, "Come with me." And I was like, okay. So we walked down the hall, and he put us and my coworker that chucked the box at me, who happened to be a man of color, was standing there. And I was like totally confused. And my manager said, "You two are going to go in this office. You're going to hash out whatever the heck is going on with you, and you're not coming out until you're done." And I stood there and I was like, I don't get it. It's just like, I don't understand. So we went in the office and we're just kind of staring at each other. And I'm like, "I don't know why we're here." And he goes, "Well, I just want you to know that I understand why you snapped at me. I understand why you were mad
Because you
at
threw a
me."
box at me.
That's what I said. I'm like, you threw a box at me, man. And he's like, "No." He said, "I've been watching the trial. And if it were me, I would hate me too."
So you're
And
going to throw a box at me?
I said, I was still completely confused. And I said, "Me getting mad at you had nothing to do with the color of your skin. Not one thing. You chucked a box at me." And I was in a bad mood because I can't get away from this trial. And I feel like a boxed in little mouse, right? And he's like, "Well, if it were me, I would hate all Black men and blah, blah, blah." And I went, nope, you don't know me. And I said, "Here's the thing. Did you pull the trigger? Did you, plan my dad's murder all those months before? Was that you?" And he's like, "No." I said, "Exactly." I said, "These were specific people who made this choice to do what they did. And the color of their skin has nothing to do with it." And he would just, his jaw dropped. And I was just like, for me, that was a big aha moment for me. That was a huge aha moment, because I thought, what do people think of me? Do they think that I don't like people of color because people of color took my dad? No, that's not who I am. That's not how my dad raised me.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a frustration for me. And I had it come up multiple times throughout my life. And I just have to remind people that I have no ill will. These are specific people that did this specific thing to take my dad, and it was their choice.
Yeah.
And so it gets very, very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
So I just, I'm almost like on the other side of that too. When George Floyd was murdered, I did a video on social media, and I was attacked, verbally, private messaged, by people who said, "You of all people should never have anything negative to say about the police department." And I thought, what? What? So, I've I've dealt with this type of thing since the beginning.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just important for me to tell all people that I am very, like, if you have I don't care what color you are, if
Yeah.
you're an ignorant
Person. Yes.
I'm going to have an issue.
Right.
But I believe we're all on this earth to live life and be happy
And serve one another. Yes.
and support one another.
Yes.
Like, I look at it this way. Our internal is the exact same.
Yeah.
We just have different pigment. That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just, that has just definitely been something that I had an issue with since then.
Yeah.
People's perception.
Yeah. Let me share this with you. Just hearing your story, and even because I had some questions for you, but you kind of answered the questions.
Happens sometimes.
You kind of answered the questions, some of there, but as you were talking, and I know that's going to sound so messed up, because this is something that we've been talking about within this series about finding the gift in the pain, finding the gift in the pain. And even though your father was taken from you in such a tragic way, and he seemed to be an amazing man, an amazing person who taught you to look beyond the color of one's skin, but just to respect that person. And knowing that the racial tension that it is now, and that especially back then when it was then in LA, it was really harsh.
Yeah.
But for you to have such a forgiving heart, but not only that, but to look at it for what it is. It was three men, no matter what color they were, took a life.
Right.
Took a life.
Right.
And the life that he took was one of the good men that were here to protect and serve us.
Yep.
Now, for me, I have two very special friends that one is a retired LAPD officer. She's a woman, Black woman. And then another one of my very best friends is a white police officer for Chicago Police Department.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I remember when that was going on, and we had another situation not earlier before, where we were talking about police brutality and things of that sort, especially when it comes to people of color.
Yep.
And I remember sitting down and having a conversation with them, and they were saying that it's taught to them a bias, have bias.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's why I truly wanted to have this conversation with you, understanding that you have been going through the healing process and you understand exactly who you are and where you stand. But not only is your voice is for just helping others to heal, but it's also to change the tone of what we see in the world for that.
God knows.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation with my husband, because here's the thing. This is my opinion only. But you hear hurt people, right? My opinion is that certain individuals who have not dealt with whatever it is, PTSD, trauma, hurt, childhood neglect, abuse, whatever. If you don't deal with that inner stuff, and you give this person a gun, a badge, an authority, it is not going to end well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like, and I just talked to LAPD. In fact, this week is the last year, this time, I was in San Diego talking to the LAPD delegates at their conference. I was their keynote speaker. And what I talked about is taking care of your mental health and how important it is for us to address this before they even go into the academy.
Yes.
There needs to be more mental, I'm going to get on my soapbox. There needs to be more mental testing to see if these people are strong enough mentally in order to handle the job.
Yeah.
When they're in the job, and I know this personally because I remember my father talking about it. If any officers in the past would seek therapy, counseling of any sort, they were looked at weak. They were weak. They got chastised within the department. You name it, right? So that conversation has started to change.
Yeah, it has.
I believe that, like I said, more mental testing before they even get into the academy. I firmly believe that all police officers should have a bachelor's degree. They need to know the Constitution and the rights of people. And I mean, really know it, like inside and out, no problem. They know it. And there are officers out there that do, right? They understand, right? And then there needs to be more mental health help available to police officers so that when they're in a situation, they're able to work through. They learn different techniques, different modalities, different things to help. Because in the past, people would scratch their heads and go, I don't understand why, drug use, alcohol use, abuse, cheating, whatever, infidelity. Why is that so prevalent in the police, in law enforcement? Well, duh, because that's their coping skills, right? Mm-hmm. Or non-coping skills, whatever you want to look at it. And so I was very passionate when I talked to those delegates in saying to their faces, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. You have to take care of your inner stuff, because otherwise your inner stuff is going to come out there. Yeah. In your job. Yeah. It's going to put you in danger. It's going to put the public in danger. And so every time I see these things happening, I can see through it. Yeah. Like I'm like, that person should have never been on the force. Yeah. Not all jobs are perfect for everyone, right? Not everybody is a good fit. And that's okay, because that's normal. And so I think we need to really have that conversation of, there's so many things, but yeah, part of that, I have had conversations with vets, and they opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of things, when they come out of the military, the first people that go after them is law enforcement.
I can imagine. But you know what, Susan? I hate to cut you off.
That's okay.
We have come to our time, but this is a whole nother show.
Oh, I know.
Conversation. I
know.
It really is. So first, what I want you to say, first of all, thank you for sharing. We didn't really
Absolutely.
I had a lot of questions, a lot of questions. Some of them you answered. You already answered some of the questions, but thank you for just sharing your story. I want to tell the readers what's the name of your book and where can they get it at?
It's called The Other Side of the Gun: My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. And it is available on Amazon. And it's in Kindle form and paperback form. I am going to go into a studio and do my audiobook. if you want any information, need any information, have any questions or anything, I do have a website. It's susansnowspeaks.com. And it has all the information on there about what I speak about. Also, it has a way you can contact me. It also talks about the book and has links and whatnot. So I am on social media under my name, Susan_Snow1 is my Instagram. And I'm also on TikTok. So
beautiful. I hate to cut it short.
It's okay. It's all good. I think
I'm gonna have to have you come on another time, and we can talk, because there's so many different topics that we can talk about right now, especially now that it's an election time, especially now that racial tension is so prevalent right now. You know, especially one of the biggest things is about police and defunding and all of those different things. So I would love to have you on in the near future where we can, you know, truly talk about that, where we can just dedicate a whole hour to that. Because you are probably, if not one of the most important people to speak about, because you've seen it from the other side of it, but you can see it where your father went through as being inside of it. And you can also see where the community, you know, had of hurting, where was, I still have a forgiving heart.
Yeah.
That now my message and my purpose is much bigger, is to show that even regardless to what this happened, we still have to look at these people as individual. And it's not a color, it's not an ethnic, it's not a cultural thing. This is what it is. And so we have to find that within all of that, of the healing process, of the forgiveness and the self-love. And I totally agree with you when you talk about before they even get into the police department academy, is that there is a mental test, classes, all of that needs to be with compassion, with empathy for others, as well as learning who they are before they even step into that room. So I totally agree with you. And again, Susan, I thank you. I thank you. I just was sitting here listening. Like, I'm serious. I was like, I'm not even going to interrupt. I'm just going to sit and listen, because this is needed to be your story. And I know you had several different interviews with a whole lot of people, but I think this story needs to be heard, because we just don't know who else that you touched out there that can relate. And that might be going through that peer pressure from others saying you should hate this person because of this or that.
Right.
From that. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. But thank you again. And to my listeners, everyone listening, I want you to keep embracing your own journey of self-love and healing, and join us next time here on the Season of Self-Love. And I want you to take care and keep loving yourself. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today, and remember, you are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer.